Welcome to episode 265 of In Touch with iOS, the show that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies. I'm your host, Dave Ginsburg, and I have Kelly Guimont back on the show. It's been too long. How are you doing, Kelly?
No, it has. Hi, David. I'm really glad to be back.
I'm glad to have you, and I'm always glad to have as well Jeff Gamet back here. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing all right. And you say you're glad to have me back, and yet I just totally pulled a Chuck Joyner on you and
you did
interrupted your countdown.
That's okay. That's why we have fun. That's what we're here for, to have fun.
Although you rolled with it much better than Chuck would have, I think.
He cracks up a lot.
He does. He cracks up a lot. And he expects me to toss an underpants or something like that out.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know.
He would not have expected a Wilhelm.
You threw me off there, but...
Is it really an Apple podcast if Jeff's not tossing underpants, though? I mean, really?
True.
Yeah,
it is true. But what's true is we have a show and we have lots of things to talk about. Lots of good news stories this week. Might even talk about Twitter a little bit. I'm sorry, X. And Apple had just announced their quarterly results. It's just hot off the press, not even 2 hours after we are now recording this show. We'll talk about that. Kelly was at the MacAdmins conference. I can't wait to hear about those fun things that happened. And lots of other things to talk about. But let's just, like we always do, dive into stories of this week. For stories, college football could be coming to Apple TV Plus as Apple is courting the Pac12. Apple appears to be working on a deal to secure the rights to college football games as a proposed deal for the Pac12. And it's according to ESPN, the Pac12 commissioner on Tuesday of this past week, as we record, presented the conference with a potential subscription-based Apple streaming deal. I guess the Pac-12 contract expires after this school year, and Apple is in negotiations to get that. The deal would start in the 24-25 season. And it could be a short-term contract, and probably Apple will see how it goes, but I'm liking this. I'm liking to see that Apple is really diving into sports. I mean, here's another way of Apple trying to get some stream content and make some money, which we'll talk about with subscription services in a minute here. But what do you think, Kelly?
This one I can tell you a lot about because it's not 10 anymore. Pac-12 is here. This is my native land. This is when people where I live talk about college football. When most people talk about football here, that's what they're talking about because there really is only one team for like 5 states, and that's the Seahawks.
Or the Ducks.
Oh no, I mean professionally. There's one team. There's nobody in Idaho or Montana or no. It's like Seattle up in the corner, and then the Broncos down at Jeff's, and that's like it. So the interesting thing about this to me is that first of all, it's a whole lot of sports for the Northwest. It's a significant portion of sports, even though that's not necessarily a ton of people and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole separate conversation. But it was interesting to me that this is where they started because I don't know how it breaks down other places, but there's so much like enthusiasm for football and the fans around college football here. It's just massive. Like you can't drive from here to Eugene where Oregon plays football. And sometimes you can't even get to Corvallis, which is between Portland and Eugene. I-5 will be a disaster like that whole day because of all the people huffing down there and huffing back because it's a couple of hours each direction. And so this is a nice way for them to get into a place with very, very strong fandom, lots and lots of ties, but then also sort of show how it can be done for the rest of the college football conferences that are available. I really like how Apple's jumping into sports because it's a huge market, and football specifically is a huge market. This sort of reminds me of the first step they took for sports being baseball. There was a whole lot of opportunity there to sort of start small and then kind of scale that up as they wanted to. And with soccer as well, with MLS, being able to get into that and then build that into something that's a little more lucrative, a little, getting a little bit more attention. I think they're really being smart about how they're going about live sport in all of this. And I'm very interested to see how this goes. This is the kind of thing that would make it a no-brainer to get my dad an Apple TV for Christmas at some point.
There you go.
Because I know I literally had to set up an Apple ID for my dad when he read a news story that Apple TV was going to have a Tom Hanks movie, and that was the only way that you could see it. So I had to help him get situated so that he could watch that. So this is the kind of thing that will reel him into the hardware as well. And then I know there's a lot of money in this, and there's been a lot of talk here about what's going to happen with the contracts when the current contracts expire because of streaming, because Amazon Prime does Thursday Night Football, I think it is.
Right.
That's what it is, right?
Yes.
I don't follow it very closely, but I know it exists. And with the other sort of streaming options and the alternatives for taking some of this stuff off broadcast television, this is also how you get more people to cut the cord. So, a lot of people still have whatever cable package it is that they have because they are huge basketball fans. They're huge football fans. There aren't compelling options for that. If you watch baseball, and now if you watch soccer, you have options for watching that stuff without having a cable bill. And now it looks like they're trying to do the same for college football. And I'm very interested to see how this goes because it's a massive, massive market. Not because I personally have any stake. I could care less. I cannot name a single player on any Pac-10 team. I don't even remember when it went to 12 and I'm still calling it 10. So that tells you how much attention I pay to those. I can probably name all the teams, but I can't tell you really anything else about them. But it's a huge market, and I'm really interested to see how Apple pulls this off.
No, I agree. How about you, Jeff? Any thoughts on this?
Well, first, Kelly, thank you for saying enough so I could start figuring out what we were talking about. I do appreciate that.
Well, I was going to say, Jeff's heard of football. Beyond that, he has no opinion, and that's probably about the long and the short of it.
That sums it up nicely. Whatever Apple can do to address the sports market is good for their platform. So good for them.
Yeah.
I still haven't been able to figure out from what you're saying what Pac12 is.
It's a conference.
It's a group of football teams.
Okay.
They there's all the teams that play college football, and they've broken them up into chunks. So there's like a Southeast, and there's a Northwest, and there's like an East, and there's like a bunch in the middle, I think is what that one's called, the bunch in the middle conference. But each conference is like a group of teams that sort of plays somewhere. And they tend to break them up geographically so that it's easier to play all the teams in your same little
general
group of
area.
competitors. Yeah.
And that's what a Pac-12 is.
Yes.
The Pac-12 conference, like the Big Ten conference, and
which also makes no sense to Jeff because
it doesn't make no sense, right?
I'm not trying to be mean. It's just the truth. Jeff,
that's
not
true.
helping.
That's okay.
That's not helping explain it to Jeff.
And I'm okay that this is something that my feeble brain doesn't wrap itself around. I can appreciate that other people really, really enjoy it, and that this is a good business move for Apple. So go Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move on and get away from sports here and talk about
unless you want to have a comedy show where you try and explain all of it to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm really happy to sit here and talk to you about Women's World Cup if that's a thing that we need to discuss. I'm here for that.
I figured you would be. But the story I want to go on to next is Apple unveils a Pay the Apple Way campaign with TikTok creators, billboards, and many more. This past week, a mysteriously new Pay the Apple Way hashtag went live on X, since seemingly teasing a forthcoming announcement or an advertising campaign. The campaign is official, and it was Apple touting a multinational advertising push that showcases the ease of convenience of using Apple Pay. Apple is launching this new campaign in the US and in the UK, and different campaigns, and they got all kinds of different videos, your watches and your wallet, and all kinds of other stuff. So they're really doing some pretty cool advertising when it comes to Apple Pay, because Apple Pay has become very popular, as we'll find out in a bit here with the quarterly results. So what are your thoughts on this, Jeff?
On one hand, I could see people saying, why would Apple invest money in a campaign like this? Because we all know what Apple Pay is and we can use it. At the same time, there are so many people that have absolutely no idea what this is. And even people that are working the cash registers in stores have no idea that this is a thing. So it's good to continually do advertising that promotes the product and raises awareness. So and didn't Apple recently get a change in the UK where actually it's not an Apple thing. I think it's a government thing that allows higher charge amounts.
Oh, without a signature.
And something like that. And so if that happened, then this would be a good time to start promoting Apple Pay again, so that people are more aware of it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I remember seeing that headline go by, and I think that might be a good reason to do it internationally. But also, I don't know how much promotion it's gotten internationally. Aside from people in other countries who listen to podcasters in the US who talk about how Apple Pay is awesome. I don't know what, infrastructure or anything looks like for that. And I still occasionally go to a store, pay with my watch, and more often than not, there's either someone in line or the person at the register is surprised that was the thing that just happened. And so I'm definitely having an awareness campaign, using people from TikTok to be the people who are promoting it is the part that I kind of wonder about, just because the people who need to know.
Smart to me.
Well, the people who need to know aren't the people who are using TikTok. Was sort of why would you use somebody that, if you don't know anything about Apple Pay, then you probably don't recognize the person in the campaign. You know what I mean? So, you need to get Tom Hanks out there buying stuff with his phone and with his watch to get the demographic that is the least aware of Apple Pay and the most afraid of it. Because the thing I have to explain to people over and over and over who are older than me is you are not carrying around a picture of your credit card on your phone for everyone to see.
No,
that's not how it works. It's very, very safe. It's very, very secure. Very and not everybody gets that. And the people who tend not to understand that are people who are older than I am. And so just because I used Tom Hanks as an example earlier, he makes a good example here. He would be the person that would get my dad to go, okay, how do I do this thing where I can pay for stuff with my phone? Or other people, that would be the person you would need. Like somebody who is famous because of TikTok telling people in my parents' generation that this is how you should buy stuff is the part that's going to be lost on them. So,
Kelly, I'll tell you where the value comes in the TikTok advertising.
Yes.
So we're talking about a lot of people that are already aware that Apple Pay is a thing. They may or may not understand the security part. Doesn't matter. Ultimately, what does matter is that a lot of these people are not actually using Apple Pay, even though they're aware of it. Getting the influencers that they follow all the time to tell them, hey, I'm doing this, you should too. That's going to be the incentive that gets a lot of these other people to start using Apple Pay.
Okay.
Yep. Makes sense. Yep. Yeah. That's what TikTok does.
So, that's why people eat Tide Pods. Maybe they'll use Apple Pay now.
There you go. On that note, that's a good transition. Twitter is finally turning to X on Apple's App Store. X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, updated its official app on the Apple's App Store earlier this week, and with the new branding that was announced by our wonderful friend Elon Musk. Instead of "Let's Talk" and Twitter's original tagline "Blaze Your Glory," is a curious subtitle on X's iOS App Store listing, which describes the app as the trusted digital town square for everyone. Okay. So the rebranding process has been going over for the last week. Apple had originally pushed back and said, No, we can't. You can't call it one single letter. We don't allow apps to be called that.
Right.
So,
and they should have stuck to that.
And they should have stuck to that. They would tell us what they didn't, Kelly.
Yeah. Well, that's the part that makes me grumpy. Is these are the rules, and we're going to change them for you. I don't care who the person is. It's immaterial who the person is, who the company is, who's responsible for it. If it were literally anyone else who came in and said, I want it to just be called a single solitary letter, Apple would have told them to go pound sand. And Apple should have told Twitter to go pound sand, because the rules are the rules, and the rules should be the rules for everybody. And, when we've been on here and complained about things not working correctly in the App Store, an app gets rejected for something, an app gets admitted for something, the reason we're upset about it is because the rules have been inappropriately applied. Either somebody got in that shouldn't have, or somebody's being kept out for a reason that actually isn't the case. You know what I mean? So that's the reason that this frustrates me, is because Apple should have stuck to their guns and said, no, you get to be 2 X's, you get to be exclamation point. It has to be 2 characters. It can't be 1. Knock it off, basically. And when Meta decides they want to be M, what's going to happen? And this is stupid. It is breaking App Store search, which is already atrocious and virtually immaterial. Anyway, it's not like you can actually search for most things in the App Store. So having it be named this as well is also really stupid. And that's even before you get to it actually being what used to be Twitter and the guy that runs things now. And, because that's just going to turn into a conversation where I use a bunch of Roy Kent words, and we're not going to do that. So that's a different podcast. So that's the thing about this that I find the most frustrating, is that this is Apple once again being a little tone deaf in what they're doing, aside from all of the stuff that goes along with this being a Twitter story. Like, you have rules, you obviously have them for a reason, and now you're letting somebody willfully break them, and that should not be what's happening. The end.
Yep. How about you, Jeff?
I'm very baffled why Apple went ahead and waived the 2-character minimum rule for App Store names.
Special treatment.
And Kelly, you're absolutely right. So what happens when Meta wants to be M, or Amazon wants to be A, or whoever, whatever the app? So QAnon, can they put an app out just called Q? Is that going to be okay? Yeah, I see this as a big problem on multiple levels. Screwing up App Store searches is one of them. Also, I'm not getting why Apple, with the things that they purport to stand for, is okay bending rules for the service formerly known as Twitter, and frankly, I'm not even getting why Apple is still advertising on that platform, considering the way the platform has deviated from what it was when Apple started advertising.
Yeah. I mean, that part is a whole separate conversation. I'm very frustrated with some of the tone deafness that I see in the App Store, like the huge push very, very recently for the official Reddit app, like top apps you should have on your phone. And one of them was Reddit. And I'm like, y'all need to read the room. Really?
Right.
Really? Yeah. And like, there's so much of that happening right now, and it's really weird. And like, every time I go look at something in the App Store, like, unless I'm clicking on a direct link that someone gave me, that I found somewhere, like, click here to go open this app. If I ever look at the homepage, and I used to go browse regularly to see what Apple thought was new, what Apple thought was interesting. And I really don't care what they want to draw my attention to anymore, because I can't get behind most of it. So, I mean, you've heard me rant about that here. So
Yeah, I don't get how developers. Sorry, I totally started walking on you. That was very uncool. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I don't get how at this point any developer will feel like they can work with Apple in good faith as far as how rules apply.
Yeah,
and because at this point, I now feel like rules for developers are arbitrary.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not happy with this.
I'm not happy with this at all. And then like all of that follows on, Jeff, with what you were talking about. Why is Apple still advertising there? It's turned into a very different place than it was a year ago. And, and like, we're going to put a whole episode of a show there where, nobody's at. Like, if they had wanted to be clever about it and draw a bunch of attention, then they could have gone somewhere else. They could have gone to Mastodon. They could have spun up their own Mastodon instance and debuted something there and sent all the nerds off to Mastodon instead, or done it on Blue Sky, or done it on the other one that I can't think of right now. And that everybody says is where you go to find fun things because Mastodon is boring, or whatever it is now. That's the part that I don't get is, given the options you have, why would you continue to have a relationship with this guy? It's not like, we've seen the numbers. It's not like people are paying for stuff through the app, like paying Twitter for anything at all. And if they are, they're certainly not doing it through the app. And so it's not like Apple's getting a taste of any of that. So what does this benefit Apple? That's the part I can't tally up. I can't make that part make sense. Is I don't understand what they're getting from advertising on Twitter. I don't get what they get by rolling out an episode of TV on Twitter. I don't get what they get out of making an exception in this case, even though it's going to be interesting to see if they end up getting it taken down, because apparently he tried to name his last company X and it went badly for a wide variety of legal reasons. So I feel like this is where we're headed with this anyway, and he's going to have to change the name. So I don't know.
I think Chaffin's razor applies.
Me too.
And for those people that don't know what Chaffin's razor is, this is the thing Brian Chaffin came up with, and I thought Chaffin's razor is just a really great thing to call it. If something seems completely crazy to us, then there's a very high likelihood we are missing a key piece of information that would make it all make sense. So I think right now we're missing that key piece of information.
Right.
Yep. All right.
Which is why that's where I'm headed. I can't parse it, and I can't figure out, and I can't even make up a reason why. That's the thing. Yep.
All right. And then real quickly, you're moving on. TweetDeck is now called XPro. So they had to rebrand that too. It's actually not bad. I mean, I've been using it for a little bit here, and it's free for now, but I would anticipate that they'll probably start charging for it soon, and I'll stop using it. So
when it breaks, good luck finding any sort of help article about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm surprised that they had enough developers to be able to go in and actually change the text lines for the product name.
Same.
I was surprised. And then last story here, more than $10 billion have been deposited in Apple Card state savings accounts. Apple Card holders have they've deposited that much into their savings accounts, and including me. I haven't deposited a good chunk of money in there. And this was announced this week. It says it was first launched in April, and this milestone comes after 4 months. That's pretty incredible.
Wow.
And Apple says 97% of the savings customers have opted into having their Apple Card daily cash automatically deposited into that account. I'm one of those 97%. That's 4.15 APY. That's pretty incredible. I got a nice big interest payment this past month, and it's definitely interesting where Apple went, and they got this partnership, and the banking and the Apple Card have just doing incredible. We've been talking about the last few weeks. Goldman Sachs is rumored to want out, but meanwhile, it's pretty successful in Apple's eyes. What do you think, Jeff?
I'm thinking that having an extra $10 billion in assets in Goldman Sachs, that's got to be an incentive to work with Apple.
You would think.
Just saying.
You would think, but
especially when you think about how many people that is, right? Because it's only if you have an iPhone and you're in the US. So there's nobody in, theoretically, there's nobody in any other place, just in any other country. So it's only if you have an iPhone and a US address that you can do banking with. So
and an Apple Card.
Right. Well, just even if every single person with an iPhone in the US is all you're talking about, that's still $4 billion or $10 billion just for that amount of people. And then you go to the number of iPhone users who have applied for an Apple Card who are actually using this service. And that's an even smaller number. So I know everybody says everybody has an iPhone, but even still, like, that's so many people, that we've excluded right off the top to get down to just these folks, because you can only even get an Apple Card if you have an iPhone and you live in the US. Yep. So that number of people tells me that the people who are doing this aren't putting $20 in to see what happens, right? This is people who are putting significant amounts of money in there. So when that number came out, I was very, very surprised. So I can't figure out why Goldman Sachs has anything to say, but please may I have another,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in just a second here with the quarterly results, because they did hit upon that. So let's go on to the topics. Beta this week, iOS 17. Beta 4 is still rolling on. Nothing too overly excited to discuss about that. I don't know if you've seen anything on your beta device. I haven't really seen much in mine, Jeff. But
no, I installed it and my iPad didn't blow up, and that's as far as I've gone.
Yeah, that's most important. So, and as everybody knows, when they have the public beta, for those who are not in a developer, or you basically can sign up and have that developer account. You just can't publish an app and get the developer account. But okay, I'm surprised they keep this on. But this is a week after, because it's been only a week since beta 4 came out, that they have now the second public beta of iOS 17, watchOS 17. watchOS 10 and iPadOS 17 and macOS 14. So, again, don't install beta if you don't know what you're doing. You don't want it on a production device. Please don't.
Right.
We say that every single time. So let's go to the quarterly results. I've got some great links here, especially Jason Snell is awesome with 6 colors. Provides his amazing charts for everybody to take a look at. It's a pretty incredible numbers, I think. But of course, the market's saying that they did lose some money here. But it was a down quarter, but it was only a 1% drop over the year ago. That a result, and so they're done. Yeah, they're doomed. They're doomed. 3 key categories that were all down year over year. The Mac was down 7%. iPad was down a big whopping 20%. But the all-important iPhone was just down 2%. Yeah. But things were a little different in the 2 other portions of Apple's business, which is had some amazing growth over the recent years. Services was up 8%, and wearables and home and accessories category was up 2%. They just had this a couple hours ago as we record this. Right now, we're at 48% of Apple's business is the iPhone. Services is now up to 26%. Geez, I think we were just talking about it this year ago. It was like around 15%. Yeah. So it's increased incredibly here. 10% wearables, 8% Mac, and 7% on the iPad. Again, they were down a little bit. $81.8 billion is what their total Apple revenue was. That was about a 1% change. Still making money, $19.9 billion in profit. I don't think that's too shabby if you ask me, but I'm not a financial analyst, so you can't really say much on my end here. 6.8 billion of Mac. That was a 7% change. And then you had the iPad, which is about 5.8 billion. That was a big 20% drop. And it looks like the iPad has been dropping. It's the second quarter in a row that it's dropped. You had a 30% increase at the first quarter of this year. but then it's been dropping ever since. So I think they need some new iPads is really where it's at here. We're going to talk about a couple of rumors here later, but yeah, they got to do that. But 39.7 billion on iPhone, and that was only about 2%. Services are just off the charts, unbelievable. $21.2 billion. I mean, we all contribute to this. I mean, I'm paying the $32.95 a month on my Apple One bundle, so they're getting my money for the services and the wearables. The Apple Watch continues to thrive, and there's a small increase. So
that's
really
also
good
HomePods,
numbers.
Right?
Yep.
Because it's home,
HomePods,
like
home
and
accessories,
wearables or something. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So
okay.
So pretty incredible what came out of it. So a couple of the takeaways. Tim Cook did touch upon AI and where that's leading with Apple, and he did say it is absolutely critical to Apple, confirming that they're investigating where AI can go. They continue to be very excited about Vision Pro, and I think it's still pretty new. We talked about last week with the developer kit that you can get and all the restrictions and all that stuff. Again, they talked about the services revenue and iPad, iPhone, and Mac sales and numbers. We'll definitely see where this goes. I think the numbers are good. I think the stock market, I mean, after hours trading, I think I saw it was dropping a little bit, and it's going to drop tomorrow because,
it always does.
They're doomed because they lost so much money, but
my takeaway from the earnings, the notable thing that I saw in that was 1 billion paid subscriptions across.
I was going to talk about that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. That to me is astounding. Yep. Yeah, I think the iPad stuff is kind of to be expected. Not necessarily because iPads are bad or anything like that, but I think if I'm remembering my timing correctly, the 10th gen iPad came out late last year. Yep. So the 2 quarters that we're talking about, because they were down and down, it wasn't a surprise to them. They said something like in line with expectations or whatever. So the thing to me about the iPads is that I think they're on an upgrade cycle. They've kind of hit that microwave sort of thing that I always talk about, where it's a utility device and it's finally mature enough. There's nothing terribly exciting that better, but if you bought an iPad Pro a year ago or 2 years ago, it's still a very, very good device for what you wanted to do with it then. It does all of that now, and they haven't added anything dramatic in the last couple of years to any of those, because I have a 2020 M1 iPad Pro, and it stacks up against everything that if I went, experience would be exactly the same. Like, it's basically the same size. It's got the nice, slabby edges and an M1 processor in it, and does all of the things I needed to do and handles all of that like a champ. So there hasn't been a dramatic evolution in the Pro. Anybody who wanted to get an iPad was really excited when the 10th gen came out, because they didn't stop selling the 9. iPad got a 9th gen last Christmas for like $300, and nobody's needed one this year. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So I think that's probably where that comes from. I'm not surprised. I have a lot of opinions about where the iPad should go, and I don't think Apple's going to listen to any of them. So I don't see that number changing dramatically. It's still so many iPads that they did sell. I mean, it's down, but it's still almost $6 billion, which is a bonkers number. If anything else, there's no other company, if they announced in a quarter that our revenue, whether it's the entire company or one piece of it, was almost $6 billion, that would be a disappointing number. There's no other company where that's sad. Right.
What do you think, Jeff? Is there anything that we didn't already cover that you want to hit upon?
And And it just really drives home how much of this is an emotional thing for investors.
Yeah.
When you look at Q2 and Q3 historically, Q3 is either just in line with Q2 for overall revenue or a little bit lower. And that trend is still changing, or staying. Then if you look at year over year revenue changes, Q3, you tend to have more revenue than Q2, and that still holds. It's across the board. What I'm seeing is that the patterns that we see every single year with Apple's numbers,
yep,
it's totally in line with what I would expect.
Absolutely.
And I do like seeing services at 26%, and I'm looking forward to seeing it go higher. This is the part of Apple's business that changes the roller coaster revenue ride, because
100%
that stays the same. It's not like you suddenly need to go buy a new TV show every September.
Right.
You're paying throughout the year. So yeah, there we go.
Services are the most profitable out of all of this.
Yep.
I think,
sure.
To go back to the top of the show, the MLS subscriptions coming out this year probably help that number. The baseball stuff being free, but probably drawing more people to the platform, probably help that services number. Like maybe now it's worth paying for people. And if you get into that and you're a big enough fan, maybe you want Apple News now so that you can follow all the stuff about your teams. So all of that kind of stuff all fits together. And I remember, Jeff, you and I, on previous podcasts talking about quarterly stuff, and everybody listening to Tim Cook talk confidently about how services are the future. This is the way. And most people writing that off as crazy talk. And,
and here we are.
Who does this guy think he is? Well, I'll tell you who he thinks he is. He's the guy sitting on top of billions and billions of dollars in revenue because he was the one who said this is the way years and years ago.
He's the smoke of technology.
Yes.
I think that's part of what is most interesting to me about all of this is, having watched all of the bricks get laid down this road and then getting here and, and people going, oh yeah, well, sure. Okay. Like it made sense all along. And I don't remember that Jeff, that you and I ever thought that, it was crazy talk or anything like that. But,
no.
I know we would talk about it and go, well, that's really interesting. And that was basically it. Like, I don't know how he thinks that, but there weren't the number of services, available at that point that we have now. So, the offer wasn't quite as appealing as it is today, but it's really interesting to watch. So,
yep. Go in the chat here at the youtube.com/intouchwithios. Ben Rathik's out there. Feel better, but Ben, we missed you on the show today.
Hi, Ben.
He says Apple is doomed. And also this, and he does also, and then he also says that they need some iPads that they don't artificially restrict as not to step on the Mac's toes. And I have a feeling that's kind of where that's coming from his blog post about Mac OS and iPad OS.
Well, it's really frustrating. And I've had a couple of frustrating experiences lately with this sort of thing. And so I 100% agree. That's part of where my, I'm probably like, Apple's not going to listen to my opinions about this, but they really need to free the iPad up to do what it can do. And that would be great.
Absolutely. What's going on? One of the rumors I wanted to talk about, and I try not to talk about rumors that often, but this one I like because it involves the iPad Mini. Macworld had an article here talking that the 7th gen iPad Mini may arrive this year. The rumor claims that Apple is planning to launch an update to its tiniest tablet. With fall quickly approaching, and then Apple, is going to gear up with more iPhones, Apple Watches, M3 Max, and this is kind of a fitting rumor. It's most questionable who is the leaker, which is Shrimp Apple Pro, saying that potentially there could be a 7th gen. The last release was September of 2021. That was the 6th gen. So it's due, and it seems like it's always a very popular iPad model. And I know, Jeff, you have one. And it's I'd be interesting to see where it goes, because this is, looking at the numbers, Apple needs to do something when it comes to iPad to come up with some new stuff.
I have a really hard time with this rumor simply because of where it's coming from, and there's no additional information. That said, I get why a lot of people don't understand why the iPad mini is a thing. I'm not one of those people. It's a fracking awesome form factor for an iPad. So I'd enjoy to see a new iPad mini come out. Maybe give us Face ID on it instead of the little
Touch ID.
Yeah, the Touch ID.
The Touch ID button is cool, though.
Touch power button ID.
Yeah.
The Touch ID power button is cool, but when I'm doing contactless authentication on my other devices, having to change for that one is weird.
Yeah.
I get that.
So
it's I have a hard time with this rumor because of how long it was between the 5th gen and 6th gen.
True.
So this feels like, even if it was the end of this year, it would be hot on the heels of the previous iteration, relatively.
2 years.
So, because 4 to 5, the 4th gen to the 5th gen was 4 years.
Right.
And then 2 more from 19 to 21, because September of 2021 was the last one. So I really wish that it would get more updates, because, like Jeff said, it's a great device. It's so good for so many things, for so many different people. It's small enough to be portable. It's super versatile. It does all the stuff the big ones do, just in a little less space. And it's one of those things, as part of my iPad complaining, that I really wish Apple would take more seriously, because there are so many people who use it and so many awesome uses for it, both for personal use and professionally. There are loads of places where I've deployed these as part of my job, because they're absolutely 100% the right thing for what we're doing.
Yeah. And Ben in the chat saying, I hope so, because I want the current mini at a closeout price.
Okay, that's fair. Apple make a new mini so that Ben can get a good deal on an old one.
I would like that very much.
It works for me. So, Kelly, you were at the MacAdmins conference. I have never been to that conference, and I've always wanted to go to that conference, but it always seems to coincide with MacStock, so that makes it kind of tough.
It's a great conference.
Yes, and I know, Jeff, you have been in the past. So sounds like you had some good stuff here. I looked at, we got a link in the show notes to their website. They've already got it updated for next year. So it's July 9th through July 12th in 2024. So they're already ready to go. So we got to get Mike Potter to start announcing when MacStock is going to be in 2024 as well.
Yeah, he's going to need that.
Yeah, we could, because we need you to be there. and it usually he has at the end of July, so we might be safe this next year. So, I don't. A lot of great speakers. Some of these speakers I even know, and I've met in the past at Mac Tech conferences and doing the local Mac Tech in Chicago. So a number of these folks, I think a couple are from Chicago too, and I saw for sure are. So what was your take on the show? You did not speak, right? You were.
It was amazing. This is the first time I've attended in an official capacity as an IT person.
Gotcha.
Well, this is the first time I've attended any conference in that capacity, because there really weren't any for a while after I got my job. And I've attended Mac Tech events and things, so I've also known a lot of these people for a long time. It was super great to see everybody in person.
Yeah.
Half of the people who were attending were there for the first time. And I thought that was really, really great. It was so nice. It was so nice to see that. There's all manner of talks that are there. Literally anybody can go submit a proposal and have a talk for something. They sort of color code them for the different tracks, like on the schedule, so you can kind of see what you're in for when you go to a talk. So there's talk about security, about deployment, about basic scripting, so that you can automate some of the boring stuff that computers are supposed to be able to do for you anyway. Improving a security stance. The first day is usually a full day workshop. And so I did a workshop on NIST compliance and how you can sort that out with macOS, and how you can make sure that macOS is compliant against NIST guidelines. If you don't know what that is, I don't recommend going and finding out, because it will put you to sleep.
And how funny you say that, because my talk was about cloud computing and cloud services. And I do recall I did quote what NIST is because I talked about cloud standards, with SAS and IaaS and PaaS and many of the others. So I had a quote in one of my slides. It's exactly what NIST defines as cloud computing.
Yeah. So it's mostly a list of government regulations. And so it's very, very boring and very, very dry.
Yeah. That's what I said. It's information security. That's their Bible.
Every once in a while, I toy with the idea of like writing a NIST translator to tell people what the compliance stuff actually is in plain English. Like, this means don't have a stupid password. This means you have to full disk encrypt your hard drive. This means, like basic level stuff. But it was terribly interesting. The tools that people were using and being able to find out about it. And the best thing about most any conference, and specifically with MacAdmin, with Penn State MacAdmins, is that people who are talking about this stuff are excited about what they're talking about. And so even if you don't know, you're still it still will not be a waste of your time to have sat in that session. If you picked one that isn't necessarily something that you know a lot about, that person who's talking about it is super into it. And that makes it super great. Most conferences are like this. That's one of the things that I really like about Apple conferences that I've done in particular, and things like MacStock, is that the person who's speaking is really passionate about what they're telling you. And that makes it a lot easier to pay attention, because they're not dry, they're not boring. Even if they're not way over the top in what they're presenting, they're still going to be able to present something in a way that's really engaging, because you can tell when somebody's super into it and you can tell when somebody's not. So everyone that I saw was super duper great. If you did not attend, but maybe you saw some stuff that like on the schedule, or you saw some speakers that you really wanted to see, the bulk of the talks are going to end up being on the PSU MacAdmins YouTube channel. So you can still go get some of. So if you really want to know about reimagining macOS patch management, or the one that I like every year, because they did some campfire sessions during the pandemic where everybody just got together online and somebody presented. I did a couple of those, and you can go and watch Robert Hammond tell you about what's coming next in macOS, and he kind of does that talk every year, and it's really nice to see in practical terms what that looks like. One that I will point out, full disclosure, Tom Bridge is the person whose talk I'm going to point out and highlight. He did a talk about macOS updates, and this is the part. Excuse me, I'm still having a hard time talking. This is one. Going forward is how you can manage software updates, what patch management looks like, how all of this stuff is going to work. And his talk is super great. It's really approachable, and you can find out a whole bunch about what's coming down the pike, which is going to be super great. So that part is super duper awesome. So definitely look for that talk. I'm trying to find the exact title of it.
We have I have a link in the show notes. I do have a link in the show notes for the YouTube channel as well as the conference itself. So
and you'll be able to see all the talks they all had, I mean, like most of them have great titles. One of my favorites that I saw while I was there was from John Welch. Hi, John. Called Be Ye Batman, Not Superman. And the way he presented.
Yep, I see it.
Fantastic. So if it's on the YouTube channel now, please put a link to that in the show notes because it was super
no
great.
link yet. The slides are there.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's mostly a philosophical approach. And that's part of what made it great. So I really enjoyed seeing his talk. I really enjoyed seeing John. I really enjoyed seeing all of those people. It was really nice to be on the way to how excited everybody is to be there, how everyone is looking forward to it. Like there's a MacAdmins Slack that's public that anybody can go join if you're needing to learn about deploying machines at scale and things like that. They are so nice and so helpful. I really enjoy being there, and it's a really great source of information.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so much stuff in here, and even some of the stuff I looked at, there's just some great resources for this show. If you're really a geek and really and you're in the IT industry like Kelly and I are, even I remember John Walsh. He did the session on PowerShell. The PowerShell is becoming so prevalent in the Mac arena now because I have to do both platforms. So. PowerShell is a big thing, and sponsors. It looks like they had some pretty amazing sponsors this year.
Oh yeah, there's some great sponsors.
Including Squirrels. I thought it was impressive that they were able to sponsor.
I got to talk to them, and they were super awesome. It was so fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love Reflector. I think Reflector, that was one of their products, is so awesome. And I've used it for years, mirroring my iPhone for presentations.
Well, they have a new thing that is very cool that might be useful to you that you should check out that we'll talk about later. I found Tom's talk. It's called Software Update, Updating macOS and iOS in the Modern Era. And it's kind of the nuts and bolts of what Software Update looks like. And then what it looks like from an perspective. When you are a person in charge of a fleet of machines and you need to make sure those things are current, what it looks like and how it's changed and how it's going to change with the new version of macOS. Which is very interesting, and my life is going to be a lot better when that happens.
Yeah. No, there's just a lot of great resources here. I know probably more interesting to the three of us, and not as much as the audience. Some people like this stuff, but even just calling out some of the sponsors, even you had both VMware and Parallels there, which is great. They both, everyone knows that those are both for emulation of, or if you've got to live in a Windows environment and want to have a virtual machine instead of having a physical machine. Those come and help.
Lots of mobile device management options. There were a lot of those folks there.
And Jamf, of course.
Jam. Yeah. Jamf, Bravos, Adigy, Fleet was there. Jump Cloud, ostensibly they do a lot of device management. They're mostly an identity provider. They were there too. There were lots of folks. Second Life, that's what they're called, right? Second Life. I'm thinking of the right one, I think. They were there picking up if you have a machine, like old hardware that needs to be responsibly disposed of, they're the place to do that. And also the MacAdmins Foundation, which is a very recent development. There's just a group of people who wanted to keep the Slack instance alive and be able to offer resources. Management and want to or people who have been at it for a long time and want to help give back to the community. This is a really nice way to do that, sort of officially and unofficially. You can go buy a shirt from them. They have some shirts that are really awesome. My favorite, a lot of people wore on one day so that we could get a picture of everybody, and it says
nice.
macOS contains a oh gosh. Called voiceover. Yeah, the part I can't remember. But yeah, that part. It's the whole thing is super great. And I really
awesome.
Yeah, they're a new organization. So a couple of the sessions are talking about them and what they're about and what they do. And that part was also pretty great. So it's super fun. Yeah.
Well, thanks for the recap. I mean, and we got links in the show notes for both the videos and the site that a lot of the slideshows are available. So that's what's great about this conference, that they're providing this information that's freely available. But support them for sure. I have two more topic, one topic and an app I wanted to talk about. First off, Google Chrome is becoming more and more of a good thing when it comes to their updates. They are doing a much better job with their cross-platforming between iOS and the desktop. Now iOS is now focusing on giving users more opportunities to initiate searches, while the desktop update is more modest. So there was 4 new search-specific features that is in the Chrome update. The address bar is now more content-aware of the web page you're visiting. That means that if it selects the address bar while you're browsing a website, search suggestions will appear under related to this page. This is an iOS. Trending searches will now appear in iOS version of Chrome, similar to what they had in Android. Not that we ever look at Android. So tap the address bar and scroll down to see the suggestions while they appear. When they appear later in 2023. And then finally, iOS for Chrome for iOS is going to have 10 total search suggestions instead of 6. Always more relevant results will appear at the top. And they did some updates to the macOS Chrome browser too. So it's good to see that Google is keeping Chrome relevant and current. I've been kind of an Edge person at work, and I'm a Firefox person at home. So I think we're slowly thinking about migrating away from Chrome. I mean, Chrome's the dominant browser in my work on the Windows side. But Edge is, I think, like you said, Jeff, you use Edge a lot, so yeah, I think Edge is a decent browser on both. I mean, even iOS. I mean, I think Edge browser is pretty good with what the app Microsoft has done. So. Then lastly, there's the last app is I wanted to speak of. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this. Is Arc. Arc came out with a new mobile browser. This is the mobile companion that's part of iOS. It's also available on macOS, and I believe it's on all platforms. This is a pretty compelling new browser that's out there. Like I said, it's available for both iOS and for Mac. I started playing with it on the Mac at first, and then the iOS version came out. So I have a link in the show notes to the iOS version. It's got some screenshots on the iPhone. It's a pretty quick browser. It does give nice focus to what you're trying to look for. I was pretty impressed for what it does. And again, add to that crowded field of browsers that are out there. And, you got Opera, you've got Brave, you've got so many others besides the ones we just talked about. This is something very compelling to see where this browser goes. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look at this yet, but I would check it out.
I have not played with the mobile version. I do have Arc on my Mac, and it's a good browser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's done. They've done some good things with it, so definitely check it out. Before we go, I still want to mention Macstock. Macstock has ended, but it doesn't end here because you have the option to get the virtual pass. If you go to macstockconferenceandexpo.com, it's out there for sale. Mike Potter, the organizer, is feverishly working on getting those videos edited and getting it up onto the pass. You should have it. In fact, right now it's out of stock. He must be holding back on selling these now. But keep your eyes open on the virtual passes. He's going to have all the replays of all the talks, including mine and Jeff's and Brittany. Brittany just knocked it out of the park with her presentation. Chuck Joyner did a great job with his analogy of how time has changed with the speed of how we do things, comparing an Indy car from when they changed tires in a pit in 1950 versus in 2013. It took over 2.5 or 3 minutes, was it, Jeff? And then the other one was 15 seconds of in and out of a pit. So just going to that comparison, he did a great presentation. Everybody did. Allison Sheridan was great, and Dave Hamilton did a great thing about Synology, and we had an amazingly fun time with the Mac Geek App crew with the caucus. That was so fun. And that
was a lot of fun.
Jeff was on that panel. That was a ton of fun. So you'll be seeing all kinds of videos on that, and go listen. Actually, go back and listen to Mac Geek App has got their latest episode that was recorded for that session. So it was a ton of fun. We missed you. So much, Kelly. And I can't wait to have you come back out next year. I'm hoping it's gonna it'll all fall into place. But go check it out, and by the time you hear this, hopefully there'll some more passes opening up. I want you to definitely go out there and check that out, because we want to keep MacStack alive and well, because it's such a great community of people in the Mac and Apple community. So
I just want to point out real quick before we wrap up, there are some really nasty exploits right now for Chrome. So if you've been ignoring that little red update in the corner because you don't want to restart Chrome, first of all, you can go change the settings
to automatic.
If you are a person I have heard about who may have a window or two that are just your emotional support tabs, you can quit Chrome, let it update, and when it launches, it will pick everything back up just where you left it. It doesn't have to be anxiety inducing, but also like the security holes are really nice, but there are a couple of features coming down the pike for Chromium, which means if you use Edge, it's the same sort of thing. It's Google trying to route around everybody's ad blockers. So keep an eye on that.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's good to protect people. And Edge is just updated too, so they're keeping them up to date all the time. But you got to make sure you're making sure that you close the browser and make sure it updates, because it automatically updates for the most part. But make sure you're doing that. Especially iOS too. You want to make sure those browsers stay up to date. So. Good tip. Thank you, Kelly. And with that, let's go ahead and wrap up for this week. That's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, which is feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Mastadon, which is at intouchwithios, or Twitter, or I'm sorry, X. Support the show by buying me a coffee at intouchwithios.com/coffee. We really appreciate it. You can also become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/intouchwithios, where you have 2 tiers available to support the show. We would really appreciate it. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you're notified when we are live streaming, which is on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/intouchwithios. You could have joined Ben Rathik and many others that were in the chat tonight, and we have a live chat, so check that out. This is where you can watch the current live stream. I always leave that up. You can go back and watch our shenanigans when we're recording a pre-show as well as during the show, as well as you can listen and watch past shows. Visit In Touch with iOS magazine on Flipboard, where many of the topics we discussed are flipped into that magazine. The link is in our show notes. You can subscribe to the show in your favorite podcatcher, including Pocket Casts, Overcast, Apple Podcasts, and many others. But better yet, just go to our website, intouchwithios.com, where all the links to all the ways to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Mastodon at DaveG65. Kelly Guimont, so great to have you back on the show. Where can people find you?
macOS contains a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. Sorry, I just had to get that in because I knew I was blanking on it, and I know it's right. Anyway, you can buy that shirt from the MacAdmins Foundation. You can find me over on Mastodon most of the time. I spend way more time there than I probably should, but it's super fun and I really like it. So you can find me there mostly at mastodon.social, but I'm switching instances imminently. I know I've said that before, but you'll still be able to find me. So you can find me there now. You can occasionally find me here. You can occasionally find me on Mac Voices Live. I was gone for a couple of weeks because after the MacAdmins conference, I spent the next week in DC for work, slowly melting because that heat was just dumb. So, and as you can hear, I still haven't quite recovered from that entire trip. But I'm working at it. So look for me on Mastodon. You can hear me occasionally over on The Incomparable. I know there are a couple of episodes of stuff coming up on various feeds over at The Incomparable Network where I have appeared because we had a 10th anniversary Incomparable get together where a whole bunch of people who are regular hosts on different parts of the Incomparable Network all hung out in Portland together for a while. And so we recorded an episode of Inconceivable live with everybody all facing each other, which was super weird and really fun. We sat in a very murdery basement in Northwest Portland and recorded a really fun episode of podcasting. So you can always go check that out. And there was some other stuff that we got up to there as well that you can probably hear over there later. And the rest of the time, mostly Mastadon. And then whenever you invite me and whenever I decide to go to Mac Voices and hassle Chuck because he's on to Jeff. And so, we need a new attack vector.
Mm-hmm. Got to keep him on his toes.
I know.
That's right. Thanks, Kelly. And Jeff Gamet, as always, a pleasure having you here. Where can people find you?
Dave, as always, I'm so happy I get to be here with you. So thank you. All right. On socials, Jay Gamet on pretty much everything. I'm most active on Mastodon and Instagram. Then shows. We've already mentioned that Chuck keeps letting me back on Mac Voices Live, so that's on Tuesdays. Then here with you, Dave, on Thursdays, and then on the British Tech Network on Thursdays for the Big Show, and then Fridays for the Mac Show. And Brian Chaffin and I record the Context Machine. And actually, we just finished recording this week's episode right before
Nice.
I hopped in here. So that'll be live shortly.
Good deal. And Ben, in the chat before you wrap up, he says he needs to see those talks of MacAdmins. He's applying for a Mac help desk position.
Oh, cool.
Hope you get it, Ben. Hope you get it, because that'll be fun. And with that, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show because we enjoy doing it, and we'll talk again soon.